Woven through the fabric of reason and science, against all odds, Landon returned, not empty-handed. He came back with a profound message, one that transcends the boundaries of time and space, offering insight into what lies beyond the veil of death. Landon claimed to have stood before Jesus, traversing a realm of unimaginable beauty and peace. What he witnessed and heard challenges conventional beliefs about life, death, and the enigmatic world beyond. This is not merely a story of survival but a narrative about faith, purpose, and a love so extraordinary that it exists only in realms most can scarcely imagine. For those who have pondered what awaits beyond this life or questioned the deeper meaning of our existence, Landon's journey might provide the answers you've been seeking. Prepare to view the world differently, as this tale invites you to embrace the extraordinary and move beyond the mundane. It all began on what seemed like an ordinary weekend in 1998. The Zay Wilder family, like countless others, cherished their simple weekend routines. Their Sundays typically included attending church in the morning, followed by a drive home for lunch and a relaxing afternoon. That Sunday felt no different. Julie Zay Wilder, a devoted mother, chatted with her husband Andy as they navigated familiar roads. In the back seat, their young son, Landon, gazed out of the window, oblivious to the life-altering events moments away. The sun cast a golden light through the car windows, amplifying the tranquility of their journey home. Julie could not have foreseen that these were among the last moments she would share with Andy. The serenity, routine, and safety of family togetherness were about to be shattered in an instant. Out of nowhere, the calm was broken by the blaring sirens of an ambulance racing through an intersection. The Zay Wilder family had no time to react. In a flash, their car was struck with a force that sent it spinning. The terrifying sound of crunching metal, shattering glass, and the brutal impact disoriented Julie. When the vehicle finally stopped, a haunting silence lingered, interrupted only by the wail of approaching ambulance sirens. First responders arrived to find a devastating scene. The car was nearly unrecognizable, crushed by the collision. Andy had succumbed to his injuries instantly, while Julie, though severely injured, miraculously clung to life. Their thoughts turned to Landon, whose limp body lay in the back seat. He wasn't breathing. Landon was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, his faint pulse and shallow breaths signaling his body was fading. Despite every effort, Landon was pronounced clinically dead. Doctors fought to revive him, pushing medical boundaries, and twice more, Landon flatlined. Each time, he was declared dead, only to be brought back, though barely. It was as if an invisible force was pulling him between two worlds, and the medical team, despite their dedication, could only watch helplessly. Meanwhile, Julie, grappling with the loss of her husband, refused to accept losing her son too. Despite warnings to prepare for the worst, she clung to hope, praying fervently that Landon would survive and return to her as the boy she loved. As days turned to weeks, Landon remained in a coma, his body connected to machines that sustained him. Unbeknownst to those by his bedside, Landon's spirit had embarked on a journey. He later described it as leaving his physical body, entering a realm of indescribable serenity and vividness. He stood in a luminous field, surrounded by a peaceful atmosphere. Roads of gold stretched before him, and an ethereal light bathed everything in love. There, he encountered family members who had passed long before his birth and two small children he felt connected to, later revealed as his siblings lost to miscarriages, an event never shared with him. Landon also stood before Jesus, who radiated love and light beyond anything imaginable. Without words, Jesus conveyed a profound message. It was not Landon's time. He had a mission to fulfill on earth, sharing hope, faith, and the reality of heaven. Though Landon longed to remain, he understood his purpose and returned to life. Awakening in the hospital stunned everyone. Despite being declared dead 3 times, Landon was coherent, recognized his mother, and spoke of his heavenly experiences. His descriptions of heaven and his siblings left Julie astounded, as he shared details he couldn't possibly have known. Over time, Landon defied all grim medical predictions, recovering fully. He began sharing his story, offering hope and faith to all who listened. His miraculous survival and vivid account of heaven became a beacon of comfort for many, as he embraced his divine purpose to spread the message that death is not the end, and heaven is real. Landon's journey, a mix of miraculous recovery, heavenly vision, and a mission to inspire, remains a testament to the extraordinary power of faith and love. Landon's miraculous return from near death left everyone around him in awe. However, it wasn't until he began to share the message he received from Jesus that the true significance of his experience became apparent. The first time he recounted it, he was still weak, lying in a hospital bed with his voice barely above a whisper. Yet, the power in his words was undeniable. He spoke slowly, choosing his words carefully, as if he understood the weight they carried. Jesus told me it wasn't my time, Landon explained, looking directly into his mother's eyes, as though the message was meant for her just as much as anyone else. He told me I have a mission, to go back and tell people about him, to tell them that heaven is real, and that we have a purpose beyond this life. For Julie, hearing her son speak like this was surreal. It felt as though she was listening to someone far older, someone who had seen much more of the world than any child could. The boy she knew before the accident had been curious, playful, and full of energy, but this Landon carried an air of wisdom and solemnity beyond his years. It was as though he had been fundamentally changed by what he experienced on the other side. Julie couldn't help but wonder why Jesus had chosen her son, why Landon had been given this message, and what it meant for their lives going forward. As Landon's story spread, reactions were mixed. Many people were deeply moved, inspired by his miraculous recovery and the message of hope he brought back with him. In a world filled with uncertainty and doubt, his testimony served as a beacon of light. People who had lost loved ones found comfort in his words, clinging to the belief that heaven truly exists, a place where we will be reunited with those we've lost. Churches invited him to speak, and soon he was sharing his story with congregations, community groups, and anyone who would listen. Despite his young age, he spoke with the conviction of someone who had lived a lifetime. His voice was filled with a quiet confidence that seemed to come from a place far beyond his own understanding. However, not everyone was ready to believe. Skeptics questioned the authenticity of Landon's experience, suggesting that his visions were the result of a brain starved of oxygen, a hallucination created by a traumatized mind. They pointed to scientific explanations for near-death experiences, citing studies linking such visions to chemical changes in the brain. For them, the golden roads and angelic figures were nothing more than the product of an overactive imagination trying to make sense of a traumatic event. Yet, no matter how many theories were presented, Landon's story never wavered. He didn't argue or try to convince anyone. He simply shared what he had seen and felt, leaving it up to others to make their own decisions. Julie found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. She was overwhelmed with gratitude for her son's survival, but at the same time, she struggled with lingering sadness from the loss of her husband. Andy had been a good man, a loving father, and Julie couldn't understand why God would take him away while giving Landon back to her. In quiet moments alone with her thoughts, the questions would surface unbidden. Why had God saved her son but not her husband? Why had he chosen to reveal this message to Landon and not to her? There were no easy answers, and it took everything she had to reconcile her grief with her faith. Over time, Julie's perspective began to shift. She realized that her anger and confusion were natural parts of the grieving process, but they didn't have to define her. Landon's words echoed in her mind, especially when he spoke of the overwhelming love and peace he felt in heaven. This was a kind of reassurance she hadn't been able to give herself. Slowly, she started to accept that there might be a plan beyond her understanding, a reason for the way things had unfolded. She began to pray not just out of desperation, but out of a desire to connect with the divine in a way she had never felt before. Landon's experience opened a door in her heart, allowing her to find comfort in the belief that Andy was at peace in a place of love and light, just as Landon had described. Landon's journey was far from over. His recovery was a long and painful process, marked by physical therapy, surgeries, and moments of deep frustration. His body bore the scars of the accident, reminders of the trauma he had endured. Yet, he faced these challenges with a quiet determination, seeming to carry a strength that went beyond physical resilience. This strength was rooted in the experience he had in the afterlife. He never complained about the pain or the difficulty of his recovery. Instead, he focused on the mission he had been given, using every opportunity to share his story and spread the message of hope and faith he believed was his duty to deliver. As the years passed, Landon continued to speak publicly, sharing his testimony with larger and larger audiences. He was no longer just a boy who had survived a horrific accident, he had become a messenger, a symbol of something greater than himself. He traveled to churches, schools, and conferences, often standing before hundreds or even thousands of people, recounting his experience with a humility and sincerity that touched the hearts of all who heard him. He spoke not only about the beauty of heaven, but also about the love he felt from Jesus, a love so pure and unconditional that it brought tears to his eyes every time he described it. For many, Landon's story became a source of comfort and inspiration. People who had lost loved ones found solace in his words, taking them as a sign that their departed loved ones were safe and happy in the afterlife. Skeptics, too, found themselves questioning their disbelief, moved by the sincerity of his testimony. It was impossible to ignore the profound impact he had on those who heard him speak. He had a unique ability to connect with people on a deep emotional level, as if he were tapping into a universal longing for proof of something beyond this world, something more than the everyday struggles we all face. Julie watched her son with a mixture of pride and amazement. She had always known he was special, but she never could have imagined the path his life would take. She saw how his message brought healing to others, how it gave them hope and helped them find their faith again. In a way, it helped her heal, too. Every time she listened to Landon speak, she felt a little of her sorrow lift, replaced by a growing sense of peace. It was as if she were seeing the bigger picture unfold before her eyes, a divine tapestry where every thread had a purpose, even the painful ones. Landon understood that his life had been forever changed by his experience, and he embraced that change wholeheartedly. He realized that his mission wasn't just about telling people what he had seen, it was about living in a way that reflected the love and light he had experienced in heaven. He made it his goal to help others rediscover their faith, reminding them that there is always hope, even in the darkest of times. He saw himself as a bridge between two worlds, carrying a message of reassurance and love from one to the other. He knew that as long as he had breath in his lungs, he would continue to tell his story and fulfill the mission Jesus had given him on that day in heaven. In the end, Landon's story was not just about a boy who returned from the dead. It was about a message that transcends time and space, a message that speaks to the heart of what it means to be human. It's a reminder that we are all part of something bigger, that our lives have meaning beyond what we can see or understand. For those who hear Landon's words and take them to heart, it's a message that can transform how they view life, death, and everything in between.